The flag for Scotland at the Commonwealth Games. We'll hear from him before the end of Drive today. Let's return now, though, to the story we were talking about earlier. The number of people convicted of causing death by dangerous driving. It's halved in 5 years. That's according to figures compiled by the BBC's Panorama programme. It follows the introduction of a new, less serious charge of causing death by careless driving. Road safety charities say victims are failing to get justice.
To give you a sense of the figures we're talking about, in 2008, just before the new charge was brought in, 233 people were convicted of causing death by dangerous driving. Last year, the figure was just 109, with another 201 people convicted of careless driving. So
let's get more on this then. Jeanette Miller is here, a motoring law expert at Jeffrey Miller Solicitors. Hello.
Hi.
Siobhan Amelia's here as well. Siobhan's daughter was killed in a car crash 4 years ago. Hello, Siobhan.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on. Julie Townsend's here, Deputy Chief Executive of the road safety charity Break. Hello, Julie.
Hello.
And Doug Bolton, a former traffic officer who now works as a forensic accident investigator. Hi, Doug.
How do you do?
So we'll all have a chat in just a second, but before we do, Jeanette, just clear it for us, really. What's the main difference between dangerous death and a death by careless driving?
Well, I think that the main issue here, the main difference, relates to the standard of driving that's being alleged against the defendant. So causing death by dangerous driving requires the prosecution to prove that the standard of driving fell far below, so really bad driving, that of a competent driver. Whereas with careless driving, death by careless driving, the standard doesn't have to fall far below, it just has to fall below that of a competent driver. So arguably a breach of the highway code could amount to careless driving.
And I guess to the average person on the Clapham omnibus, it just implies that the offence is less serious if it's careless driving.
Careless is less serious, it involves a lesser sentence.
OK, so on that basis then, Siobhan, let's have a chat about Kate. Tell us what happened to Kate 4 years ago.
Right, it was actually Sarah.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right, no worries. She was having a lift from her friend with another friend on New Year's Eve 2008 in the afternoon. And the driver of the car in which she was travelling lost control on one bend due to excessive speed. He overcorrected before the next bend, which resulted in the car being on the wrong side of the road with the passenger side exposed to oncoming traffic just around the bend. A car came around the bend and killed both of them instantly. So both drivers were relatively uninjured. Both passengers in the one car were dead.
So what happened to the driver of the car who caused the accident?
OK. Well, the case took until March 2010 to come to court, where he eventually pled guilty to death by careless driving, where he got a 12-month custodial sentence, suspended for 2 years, and an 18-month driving ban.
And what did you think of that?
Well, it's not adequate.
Were you looking for a longer sentence? Is it the very fact that it was careless driving? Would it make a significant difference to you if it had been dangerous driving?
Yes, definitely it would. I think carelessness is forgetting to buy a pint of milk on the way home, or, losing your car keys, but certainly driving in a manner that results in the vehicle you're in control of being on the opposite side of the road and therefore exposed to danger because of your actions and nothing else. Clearly that's dangerous, not careless.
Julie, from Break, what does your charity make of this distinction? What would you prefer to see happen?
Well, we have for a very long time thought there are major problems with our system of charges and penalties in cases of road death and serious injury. We're a charity that provides support to families whose lives are devastated and turned upside down by these road crashes. And time again, we hear from these families that they feel grossly let down by our justice system. Like Siobhan, they don't feel that justice has been done. They feel that the penalties that are handed out are paltry and insulting. And we also, like Siobhan, we take issue with the terminology of careless driving. If you have taken a risk at the wheel and that has resulted in someone's life being ended or somebody suffering a horrendous injury, that should not be termed careless. So we need a big shake-up of our system of charges and penalties to make sure that justice is done in these cases.
Jeanette, it's been suggested that prosecutors are using the careless law because it's just easier to get a conviction. They can possibly plea bargain it down from a case of dangerous driving?
That's not been my experience. I can understand how people might suggest that. I'm interested to watch the Panorama show later on. I suspect there may well be some tendency on the part of prosecution where evidence may not be of the quality that they would like, and therefore, rather than going in for the higher level prosecution of causing death by dangerous, they may choose to play it safe, as you put it, to prosecute for the lesser offence. That, as I say, that hasn't been my experience with people that I represent. But
you wouldn't be surprised if people jump to that conclusion?
I wouldn't be surprised, and I think that there are other issues. I don't know what other factors have been considered with the figures that you referred to earlier of the number of convictions, but I do think there are some serious issues with the way in which the Crown Prosecution Service is operating at the moment, and we're encountering that on a regular basis. What are those issues? Just problems with efficiency, problems with ensuring that the evidence is in order, and I think that may well feature as part of the reason for the number of convictions falling.
Doug, as I mentioned at the start, you're a former traffic officer. You now work as a forensic accident investigator. How difficult is it to distinguish between the two offences of dangerous driving and careless driving?
Well, it's basically what Jesse just said. It is the evidence. The point is that, like every offence, the evidence has got to be put before the court to prove that offence. There are plenty of ways, obviously, that can be done. Where we can get speed from skid marks, we can get speed from damage. But I've got to say that it isn't always speed. It is inappropriate speed in the wrong places which causes accidents. But a lot of cases where people are reported for or charged with death by dangerous driving, speed isn't involved at all. It is that they've made a mistake with terrible consequences. And what happens these days is that drivers are charged for the result of the accident, not the driving itself.
Why is there a need for a death by careless driving charge?
That came in because when it was just death by dangerous, the only alternative to that was just simple driving without due care and attention. So that was a big drop. So that was brought in so that there is a lower charge, which is easier to prove, and therefore more people are getting prosecuted for that. But I also think that there are lots of facts why people are not getting prosecuted for death by dangerous these days. Firstly, there aren't as many deaths on the road. It's near enough halved in the last 10 years. The cars that we drive are a lot more safer, so therefore there isn't as many deaths for that reason as well.
Siobhan, the accident happened 4 years ago. The fact that the driver was charged with death by careless driving, has that not helped you to get closure from this incident?
Certainly not. Because obviously the sentences are much less for careless driving, it actually led to 2 further convictions, the most recent one being for drink driving, where he was found twice over the legal limit. Now, in both of these cases that happened after the initial conviction, in his defence, it was said that the previous conviction, the one in which my daughter died, had a bearing on his behaviour, resulting in the second 2 convictions, which not only piles further insult onto injury for that to be used as an excuse, but it also flags up that the system here is failing, because had the first conviction been dealt with appropriately, then he would have had some assistance in coming to terms with the consequences of his actions. So it really does stick in my craw that it was used as an excuse for his bad behaviour when we just have to live with the consequences of his bad behaviour.
And Julie, you represent Brake, as I've said already. The Crown Prosecution Service weren't able to speak to us today, but they say they're confident that cases are charged appropriately and that it makes those decisions on the evidence alone. It can't say more than that.
The evidence that we've got suggests otherwise. These figures suggest that we are seeing cases that should be prosecuted under the dangerous driving charge, under the more serious charge, being prosecuted under the lesser charge. And we've got lots of examples of drivers who have committed specific, risky, illegal acts, and that's led to a death. being prosecuted under this lesser charge of causing death by careless driving, and we just don't think that's right. We think this problem needs addressing, and we hope very much to see decisive action from government very soon to rectify this problem.
OK, Julie, thanks for coming on the programme. Thanks to Doug as well. Thanks to Jeanette, and thanks to Siobhan as well. If you want more on that story, then you can watch Panorama tonight. It's on at 8:30 on BBC One. It's 6:51.
This is